Very good evening to everyone who has joined for this, I would say, yet another enlightening session on the GIBS IRE talks. IRE, I would say, is one of the most important pillars for any economy to grow. This is my firm belief. For those who never know and hearing this for the first time, IRE stands for innovation, research, and entrepreneurship, right? And any country for that matter, you call them as emerging economies, you find them very strong in these three aspects, correct? And from Indian perspective, considering that, we are now flourishing towards the, emerging economies and the place we belong to, Bangalore, considering as the startup hub of the country, talking about a lot of startup ecosystems, entrepreneurships, and all that. I think it's a proud privilege for me to host this particular talk with, the expert from Sweden who has joined us all the way. Before I talk to him, a quick introduction about GIBS. It's one of the premier B school located in Bangalore, in Karnataka, India. We run BBA and the PGDM program, the master's program, and we have closer to 900 students in our campuses. Of late, we have crossed our national borders and have done a lot of events globally. And I believe that, today location is not at all a problem. With the best of the best technologies in place, you are able to connect the best resource across the globe. And Dr. Staffan happens to be one of the best resources today that have requested him to be a part of it. Well, one of the flagship program of GIBS has always been IRE, and it's a program that is quite mandate for our postgraduate students, where along with their the regular curriculum, they are extensively trained on innovation, research, and entrepreneurship. Because I'm so very happy to say there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs in this particular department, in this particular institute, and many of them are quite eager to listen to you because they are all excited to begin their journey on entrepreneurship. Well, for students and the faculty resources who have joined this particular session, I take the great opportunity to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Staffan has a very long, successful career as a business leader, consultant, and also in the academics. He has been a visiting professor for many world-class institutions, I say. For the past 30 years, he has been fully focusing on understanding and developing expert knowledge that contributes to a healthy and profitable growth in medium and large companies, especially companies operating in several international markets. I would say at the core, it is about understanding how individuals best create performances and how different groups value loyalty. That's where the sessions are all about. And the stunning is he has been working with over 150 international group of companies. I mean, that is incredible, I would say, as a mentor. He has conducted more than 3,000 interviews focusing on business model, innovation, and created over 1,500 seminars in the field. So I say there cannot be any better resource, for this particular topic. Dr. Staffan, such a pleasure having you. On behalf of all my students, faculties, and the management, I extend a heartfelt welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation, of course, and the presentation and the opportunity to speak here at the IRE talks today. I think when I'm hearing about myself, yes, I'm very much an innovation guy, a researcher, and I've also been an entrepreneur. So my goal with today's speech, when you ask me, is to give you more insights in the technology development and point out in the global markets, and especially regarding the different business models and how innovation can elevate and create opportunities for entrepreneurs. As I love, you said that I'm working very much with mid-sized and large companies. That's true, but I've also been working with rather new companies, of course, as well, tech companies. So my ambition today is to invite you to a business trip.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. So audience, we have framed this talk today as Innovate to Elevate, building business models for tomorrow. And the moment I thought about business model, the only synonym or I could remember is Dr. Staffan, because his contribution or his research in the field of business model has been incredible, I would say. So, Dr. Staffan, I would like to begin, to hear you on what's your thought on business models for today. I feel that, the businesses have seen a lot of transformations from the day one to 2024, what we are right now, especially post-COVID scenarios. So can you give a short background about the business models and especially the business models for today?
I would say that if you go back, I have it in prepared questions also, but if you go back and see what happened during the last 30 years or so, everything had been changed from a stable market to a market that really goes fast. And that affects the business model in itself. The international setting is very interesting in the sense that you can reach for other resources. So it's quite important how you create your value, how you set up your key resources, and how you structure the business model. So business model was not really on people's eyes 30 years ago. I will talk a little bit about that later on, but my view of that is that it came from technical descriptions, and the technical descriptions in the past took away and took off in the mid-90s because of the IT boom.
Yes.
The forthcoming, so companies, for an example, they have been developing IT and stuff like that over the last 20 years or so. So when I started to work into two global companies myself, and those were very, very immature in the beginning, and then after a while they become more IT, and the disruption of IT came. So the business model is really, today we see hundreds of different business models. And I will hopefully come in a little bit deeper to that and speak about entrepreneurship as well, because that's important even in mid-sized and large companies, where I have most of my research.
Right. So you mean to say it was the boom time of the technology, 90s, wherein the business model actually start taking shape? Or how do you feel? When did you feel that business model actually start taking its shape?
Yes, so somewhere there, yes. But the first talk about business model was earlier than that, in early 50s. But taking shape, yes. And that's related to the whole change in the market. We did have a stable market before that. And with all the technology development coming, it was possible to change everything. So that's partly the everything. And I've been to this in my own research as well, digging into articles and books, reading about the history. But it's it's still developing, and it will develop throughout the tech development.
Great. A lot of us, have been talking about technological development, and these days we tend to hear AI, artificial intelligence, is playing massive role in, the business transformation. So, how do you think? How has technological development affected the market historically?
So, if we go back, I mentioned 30 years, but if people have been moving in trade for thousands of years, from Silk Road, China, to development in England with steam locomotives and trains in the 1800s. The technology development during the last 200 years is fantastic. Just to mention a few: electricity, boats. If you take boats, for an example, they have been around for more than 40 to 60,000 years, but the first steamboat was built in New York, 1807. Transport is another thing of that, the first car, 1885, aircraft, the first truck, 1896, increased from the World War 1930 and onwards, radio. I wrote a book a very long time ago, shortly, about radio. They developed to use as communicate in trenches in World War One. Internet in 1960s, 1990s. Before that, telex, fax. So the whole scheme here, the Second World War will then contribute with further momentum in goods and capital with Bretton Woods system. I don't know if you heard about this, but where they wanted to help and increase the speed of trade in order to get faster reconstruction. The global market have always been interesting, but here is also the starting to be noticed that some countries today, for an example, have more or less no production of their own. And of course, also in the international setting, it's necessary with international laws and other combining elements. Otherwise, we will have problems. For me, I'm calling that barriers. So when you coming into a business model or a business, you must know those as well, because tax, for an example, is not the same within countries.
True.
So that's a very short background.
Yeah.
Of the historic. So the movement of technology have been fantastic, and it's also, of course, one of the biggest reason for us sitting here, I guess.
Wow.
Because we nowadays we can talk with another through Zoom or Teams or whatever it is.
True.
Yeah.
How's the situation in Sweden? Because I tend to hear a lot about them, and that's definitely in my bucket list to visit that country once. How about Sweden? How about Sweden's development towards technology and integrating with the business models there?
I think Sweden is quite good at taking care of technology development. We do have we have been fortunate enough to have quite big companies producing patents and stuff like that. So, and we try to work with that a lot I mean, you can go all over from the 90s. We are a country selling woods and steels and stuff like that in history, but from early 90s we started to sell music industry instead and things like that. So yeah, I think we are on the forefront. And also when I'm meeting people from other countries, telling that I'm a Swede, they always think that, well, you are good in structure and processes and stuff like that. But combining two business model when it start to take shape, if I can take you into that a little bit. So I said to you earlier that we first heard about them in the literature in the 50s, but at that time we still used them very much of theory because we still thought that the market was stable and did not really move. So very many of the theories before were for stable situations. So that's what you learn about in school. Competing, I don't want to mention too many theories here, but very many of those are for stable markets. The innovation part came very much in the mid-90s when the IT boom came across, and there was a need for something new. So the whole disruption theme started from expensive computers down to today, where we are today, and can be bought almost by anyone. I would also say that another thing which is very interesting if you work with things like I do you must know about RIO. RIO is a combination of elements, and the reason for that is the assets part. First, before we saw assets as tangible assets, but RIO by A. Byrne in 1991 is a broader perspective on assets from tangible to intangible assets. And RIO means valuable rareness, inimitability and substitutability. And I also want to mention another thing combining to this business models. 1982, there came a book, In Search of Excellence, the world's most sold management book. And it's mentioned there that in a company of 15,000 employees, you had 500 support staff approximately. Today, the same size of company have about 100. So I guess we can say that the development of the IT industry shaped a broader need. And in all this, I founded this consulting company that I work with now since 96. So I've been part of the change from the start, so to speak. And my first 10 years was also in companies, international companies. So I saw, I'm actually trained manually from the start. So I'm that old. But then again, you need to shape yourself, and I'm a strong believer on lifelong learning. Yeah.
I believe you agree to this. Business is all about creating value and finding innovations, right? Value creations and innovation is something very key for a successful business enterprise. What's your viewpoint on this, on value creation and finding innovation?
Value creation has been very much, it's harder today, and the innovation part is really, and the reason for that value creation is harder is that the market trends so fast. So I would say that if you see how I work and how we do work with that, it's super important to have this, the model and innovation activities. They should look at opportunities, have a clear picture on margins, clarify costs, reduce risks, and see where there may be bottlenecks in the existing business model. And it should clarify and create intervention of something new or within a framework of an existing business, or with a focus on developing value. The process for doing this is really a key point, I would say, as well. So if I explain this very briefly, you can say, if you have an understanding of external and internal drivers, what we call driving forces, these can guide you from, and we do work in three parts. We look at the outside world, we look at the branch, the industry, and the company. And of course, to me, business model innovation is reached out in more than 2 markets. So from that, you can start to create concepts and clarify the different types of concepts with scenarios and build them. And every scenario should then be true, and then push, test, evaluate, go back. And in an international settings, I would say that what really is a key point here is the Barney that I brought up here, because Barney, I use that myself. I look at not only physical things, I look at the organizational structure, I look at physical things, of course, human factors, and also capital. So in my situation, I can divide them into at least 20 different resources. And if you go back to what value creation is really about, within a business model, it can really, I mean, if you have that structure, key resources, value proposition, and key partners, that will, you need to go for it and go back.
Absolutely. I strongly agree on the point that you made. The market is ever changing. So I always tell business is all about change management. So if I have to ask you the question on this, how do you work in your company related to business models and change overall?
So we do work. It's a really good question. We use the same structure. We have worked with this so long. So we use the same structure for business model cases and actually all related questions to strategy formulation, execution, and innovation. But very many times when I meet people at the first stage, they think they have a problem with the organizational structure, but then after a couple of meetings, we can agree upon, well, it's probably the business model. So we work in 5 steps. We start with meetings, and it's a fantastic process. Setting up a propose, clarify. Normally it's 2 to 4 meetings, making sure everyone understands. It's very easy to think that anyone understands, but you have owners involved in this. You have a board normally, and you also have CECIOs. And the problem here is that there are 3 different people of groups. So we're trying to make sure that this aligns very well when we start. Then we do a pilot study, very much often with the CECIO or the owner groups, or maybe a selected group for a project and a case. We can use notes, of course. A business model is very, I mean, it's simple in the setup from segments to the delivery, and sometimes we use notes just to show everything, but very many times we use interviews and then map them after the interviews. Then we go deep if it is a case. So the first two settings, setting up business meetings, doing this pilot, is very important to do, because if we go deep, we can start to fix things before we go deep. So bottlenecks, for an example, in mid-size and large companies, you always have bottlenecks in a sense. Right. And if you have bottlenecks, the business model doesn't really work. And normally the management should know, but sometimes they don't. So going deep, and for a new company, you have to work hard. I'm comparing this sometimes in interviews, saying, well, a managing director in a tech company have to work 70% by funding the company. But on the other hand, on the mid-size and large company, he had to work with projects and secure that everything is running smoothly. So the third part, going deep, is from setting up the direction for a research, aiming for a result. And it's all about creation. I mean, we use creativity and problem solving as a strength. This part is a listening part, and thereafter we're using data to come up with a solid analyze. Sometimes we use systems and vivo, and sometimes manually. It could be quite large cases. It's a time-consuming activity. And then the interesting part, then we come to the brainstorming activities. So we meet the group again, normally 5 to 6 times, making sure that they work with their own resources. Every time, more or less, coming out 30 projects, we set them down to 10, we evaluate them, make them at profit centers, and then we start to change in a plan. That's how it is. Yes. Briefly discussed. The plan in itself is logical. And I mean, so you said that in the start that I've been mentoring quite a few cases. Yes, I have. So when we do this, I say that the first creativity part, it's maybe 3 to 6 months. If you start a new company, could be 8 months. And then the other part, it's probably if you make sure that you want to work, you bring me in, and then I will stay there. But just as a resource and overlook the transition. So because very many of you probably know that if you have a change, very many strategies doesn't work even in a change process. So I'm always saying that if the strategies aligns with the business model, it will be self-working. So you need to make sure that you have a goal for this. And the best thing to me is that I have been working with action research, which means that I'm very much in the action, and it gives a possibility for the company to work directly with me and have the mentorship. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And we have about 60 points that where we look at in the outside world branch and company. So summing up in this, I'm not gonna, it takes too long to describe this, but
Yeah.
it's about 18 factors that we start with. And I do think one of the most important part is don't overlook this, don't work too much with it. I mean, you can do bottlenecks fix, and that you can earn a lot from that, and then do the innovation part, because innovation is really a key here is incrementals. Everyone looks for radicals, but we all know that radicals will, as I mentioned, electricity, for example, Thomas Edison, how many of those will we find over a lifetime? Not very many, but we have been in a very interesting 200 years here. So I guess if we look back, we will see all this coming up.
I mean, your profile says you have mentored humongous number of the companies of various sizes, and I strongly agree to the fact that you mentioned innovations are quite necessary, because end of the day it's all about offering something new, something unique to the customers. So how do you think the innovations can elevate value, or does it help in creating new opportunities for entrepreneurs?
I didn't really hear your question. Sorry for that.
Yes, let me repeat. I agree on the point of the innovation that you mentioned. I want to know your opinion on how can innovations elevate values and create new opportunities for entrepreneurs.
So innovation is, as we, I think we can agree upon that. It's super important. So if I divide this for companies, for an example, you must be able to understand internal driving forces and be quick on the external ones.
True.
So early data, if you did not know, I'll give you an example. When I did my first university studies very, very long time ago, I've been back and forth to university 4 times. And then I started my first job, and I was researching data computers. And I found out I think it was my last thesis, actually, early 90s, no, in the mid of 80s, that if you didn't sell the computers, you put them in a balance sheet, but they were worthless. You couldn't sell them because the price had been going down so quick. So, and the same thing in a business model. If you build a business model through a key person that are leaving, if you compare today, the leaving part is really, you don't stay lifelong in companies, especially here. We have, there are figures saying that youth staying 4 to 5 years. And I think another part for entrepreneurs is to be close to the market, be close to the customer, because everything goes faster. Get the people involved, create new leaders, create an open support and participate leaders, creating trust and meet the customer. Understanding the business is super important, and secure that you have internal entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. And I do think we will see more of lead through others. That's really not the case from before when we were building hierarchies. If you want to grow, you must make sure that everything is stable in a sense, and they know what they have for the goal and the measurement. If you go to schools, I think we need to prepare students for this changing role. We need to invest more in research, collaborate with companies and authorities. That's super important, and develop an understanding of what competence is and what knowledge is. Knowledge to me is insights. So if you have knowledge, it goes faster. Unfortunately, you can't buy knowledge yourself. It will be a way of learning things. So I think it's important to learn to teach students beyond GDP and see beyond social benefits and environment. You know, the gross domestic product that we have been looking for so long. So it's all about setting up a structure for students that have a domino effect on business decision, because business decision, I try to explain that from the 500 to 100, it means that the decision-making machine for a leader will be very much more than before. So if I was a student today, I will make sure that I have an insight in social, environmental, and an economy. So it's not really one part. And also work interdisciplinary, promote and inquire in environment. So that's my, it's a very interesting time for students, I would say. And you can see in my age, I can see, I have quite a few kids myself, and I hear them talking about the different roles. So roles are also another part of an entrepreneur. But they changed name. So nowadays we see, for an example, UX, which is super interesting. They combine psychology with data. And it's also a different viewpoint of how you actually sell. So business model is a customer journey. So we all try to fix that because if you and a product or a service have latent profits. So we do. I'm a strong believer that myself, to put up products a little bit earlier than others, because I know that you can gain a lot from that. But it's you need to be bold, of course. Yeah.
While you're talking about business models, I remember one instance, I would not love to name the company. There was one company in India which was having a lot of models, models meaning the fashion icons as a brand ambassadors. That worked for a very long time and collapsed one day. So I was in a conference. I asked one of the speaker, why did that XYZ company failed? And he gave a very simple answer. The XYZ company failed because they never had a business model. They only had models.
Yeah.
I think
that
answered everything. I mean, in fact, it was very true. It was a very long sustained company, collapsed overnight. Anyways, I just remembered because that makes the point very strong that business model are quite essential. Well, I always tell my students the main character of an entrepreneur lies in grabbing all the opportunities. So if I ask you this question, what are the 4 opportunities for you as an entrepreneur?
So the first one, which I've been writing posts about as well, I even lay out a post on LinkedIn 2 days ago. So embrace risks. So you need to embrace risks. that's part of the entrepreneurial movement, so to speak. So it's a mindset. You need to realize that it is a risk. It's always a risk. The second part I would say is steer towards a direction. And I met quite a few entrepreneurs over the years, and one thing which brings them together for me is that I'm part of that myself. Do try to find an itch, which means that you are interested. Then you probably can become interested in that and maybe find your passion. So the third thing is you need to strengthen the vision of the future, because the vision of the future will help you, and that will come when you have your heart is in your business. So the heart must sing. And the fourth thing is the activity steps out of the comfort zone, because resilience is not taught really by schools yet, but we do talk about that. And as I see business models now becoming more flat, it means that you will take more decisions, and the decisions will come more as to the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur still needs the movement, the speed, and all that thing. So I would summarize those two: embrace risk, steer toward the direction, strengthen vision of the future, and then take active steps out of your comfort zone. Of course, your own comfort zone, because if you take too bold steps, it will probably hurt. If you have a good mentor, you can probably build resilience for that.
Yes.
But it can also, so I'm always saying, try to train on not fall too deep. So it's better to fail. You need to fail in a sense to learn as well. So as an entrepreneur, you're failing very many times, but the interesting thing is, don't go deep. I mean, failure is part of life. If you look at successful entrepreneurs of today and yesterday, they have failed quite a few times.
Absolutely.
So it's very much a mindset thing, those four.
We spoke about it yesterday. I was interacting with you virtually. You remember we spoke about entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
That's quite
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Well, you just highlighted on the future. So I would definitely love to know what is your viewpoint on the next curve for the future?
So I would say, I will fantasize a bit here, because no one really knows about the future, even though we do surveys and stuff like that. But we will definitely work differently. We will focus more. We will see online as an opportunity, as we do today. I do think, as we now are in a school setting, we will probably rethink future school forms. In the early 90s, we developed tests, for an example. Now we talk about personality instead. We need to ensure that we give today's and tomorrow's students the right working tools. A university, for an example, I strongly think that they need to approach the market, accelerate the students with not only the right knowledge, but the knowledge that is demanded by the market. So, and I'm not saying that university should not have science, because there is difference between science, problem solving, and action research that I'm doing. But the difference today are that we used to sell to the market. Now the market buys from us. So that means that we need to create better things, and we need to get better. So, and I think that there will be probably other people saying other things, because there are no truth about this, but as I see the technology developing, starting so fast in mid-90s, they bring in a very interesting thing here, that if you don't upgrade your knowledge, that will be a problem for you, because you don't know exactly how long you can use that. In my age, I'm combining all these things that I'm very interested in sorts of things. I'm quite good at economy, of course, that's what I work with. And if you go back in my CV, you can also see that I started up as a project researcher. I did go to finance. I worked with marketing. I've been a managing director. I've been CEO, and I've been a board chairperson as well. So it's really a question of finding your passion.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a 360-degree view of entrepreneurship, I would say.
Yeah, and that's my interest. Even though you work with mid-sized and large companies, you can still be an entrepreneur. You need to do that, because that's the competition in itself. And as you can also see, I did a doctorate, and the doctorate was also in that line, business model innovation, and how you can make sure that you continue growing. Because if you're not growing, you will probably be out in the market sooner or later.
I know. Yes.
Yeah.
And anyone has started business to ensure there is a longevity, there is a long-lasting survival. Nobody has started the business to close tomorrow.
No.
Well, Dr. Staffan, there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs watching you. So they have posted some questions. With your permission, I would like to take some of those for the remaining 15 minutes of your time. With your permission, sir?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes. Thank you. So there's one question. What are the most common barriers to innovation across different cultures, and how can businesses overcome them? The barriers to innovation.
Well, you brought up, I mean, legislation is one part, of course. That's could look very different between countries. Culture, you had culture in the question here. Culture is really a key question. Culture is not really in the business model setting, but today, as we can use, communications, the speed of communication is so quick, so it can really bring up barriers against your idea. So in my view, you need to have some support of local staff as well. So you must, so I know that there are, a friend of mine did a thesis rather recently about culture. And I do think culture is also a question of, do we mean the same thing when we're saying this word? So that's a barrier, of course. Capital could be another one. I don't want to talk too much about capital, because that's also combining to legislation, but we can see capital differently, and economy, and how we actually work in different countries. Yeah, I hope that was an okay answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Linking to the same domain again, what key leadership qualities are necessary for driving innovation, especially in a global business scenario?
I mean, creativity and problem solving is key here.
Right.
And if you are interested in this field, I'm saying that in another podcast quite recently, that I don't know why I'm born like this. I'm on the one hand a thinker, and on the other hand I'm a doer. So everything in between is the creation in itself. So I would say, from a leadership perspective, you need to make sure that you supporting your team, decently, make sure that you bring in feedback, because feedback loops can really support innovation as well. So don't be afraid of bringing in numbers of people, open up. And I do think there are new strategies, open strategy, which I like in a sense, even though very many leaders still think that strategy is only for the leadership, but creating strategy is something else. It's open strategy is fine there, very fine.
There's one interesting strategy, a question here while we began our discussion with the technology. So there's one student asking this question: what is the impact of blockchain technology on business model innovation?
Wow, that was a good question. I'm not sure that's a future question, I guess. I mean, there have been so many over the years. I could answer this in another angle, because payment is actually something that you do for the work that you create. So it's a cash delivery somewhere when you set up and blockchain and other parts. I would not be surprised if you see alternative payment structures coming up, as that's really, as I said, the payment or the revenue streams are not really in the business model settings, but it is in a sense as well. To be not too long, my first job was really as a project and research guy in an American company. I worked with creating revenue streams. So that was a fantastic job. And I think I gained a lot from that. So I do think we will see more of that coming. I don't want to say yes or no to, but from a business model perspective, it's interesting. Yes.
Right. Today, I think we speak about sustainability. We speak about environmental friendly strategies and all that. So there's a question on what is the role of innovation in reducing carbon footprints?
Wow, that was also a good question.
Indeed.
Well, we all know that we need to change quite a lot. So there are numbers of change coming up, electricity, data. So well, it will be important, I guess. Everyone talks about this. I can't answer that more than that. The role will be important, I would say.
True. These days entrepreneurs are very much into innovations and bringing in something very new to the business. So in this domain, one student is very much interested to know what skills will employees need to thrive in order to have a seamless flow in the business, in the corporate field. What skills the employees need to thrive in?
As an entrepreneur or
as an employee working with an entrepreneur?
Working with an entrepreneur or working for
Yes.
For an entrepreneur. Well, an entrepreneur will move forward. Before I would say, well, you need to be a follower. You need to listen carefully. You need to run. You need to run fast.
Right.
But today, I would also, it could be quite fun to work with. And in corporates, you need that as well, because corporates are also changing quite a lot, as I said earlier. So I would say that you need to be able to take care of the speed. That's part of. But one thing which I think is interesting, if you are prepared to do that, you will learn a lot, because so that's the gain part of that. But then again, it's really depending on what you want to do after that as well.
Very true. You spoke about a culture a while ago. There's another question there. How do you think the cultural differences impact the implementation of new models?
Very much. Very much. I even said, Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I said in another podcast that culture doesn't serve strategy for breakfast. So culture is really super important, in my view, in my personal view. And you must make sure that you make the company, or at least the leaders, that they understand and secure that. So you mentioned, I have a few new books out, and one of them mentioned three-step management. So three-step management is a way of driving projects inside a company, and setting up an entrepreneur, making sure that you have a group of people that can take care of the entrepreneurial movement, setting up, all the resources, creating boundaries, and stuff like that. And the only thing that you need after that is ambassadors, and ambassadors can be placed outside, inside, and what they do is that they support the movement. So they create good stories. They explain when it's get tough, and they even support the people when it get tough, because it will get tough. A change is tough.
Absolutely. Great. So there's one question on financial risks. So what are the financial risks of adapting new business models?
Well, that was part of my doctorate, actually. That was one of the interesting questions that I had, because I worked for so long, and then I decided to see if I could find something which could secure the start and the delivery in the end. So the book that I mentioned have 30 concepts. Well, the one that can secure finance more than anything, I would say, is the propose and the start. So if you have a bad propose, don't think you will come out with success. So you need to make sure that and that there will always be questions. There will always high expectations on business models. So make sure that the owners, the boards, and the C-suites have the same view, because that's also a finance risk, I would say. If the management coming in saying this and that, and the owner doesn't understand, and he put in, or they put in money in this, and then suddenly, well, it didn't work. The value proposition was not right. The key resources are missing. The structure is not right. In a business model, you also have partners. So, and partners is really important in the sense of finance as well, I would say. There is 3 or 4 typical situations where a business model work better than others. So finance is, of course, super important. I would say in very many, or almost all my projects, that's one of the, maybe not the first question, but it's always there,
Right.
the risk. So I think I want to say one more thing. When we do this work, the first 6 months or 3 months or whatever it is, it's super creative. But in the end, we risk calculate everything that we do. So we try to make sure that those 30 projects, down to 10, down to 5, are risk evaluated and packed like this in a profit center. Or
True. So I have a question here. If somebody wants to elevate his business, because today is the era of globalization, if somebody wants to cross the national border and get into some emerging economies for expanding his business, what is your tips for them?
Well, first of all, I mean, and you need to understand the structure of your value proposition, and maybe as when you start a business, for an example, you need to do research. So the research here is super important, and maybe try to understand how is the customer buy. Do they buy the product or service as the same way that we do in our country? And that's not really the case, and then put up arguments for the product or whatever it is. And I think there have been many mistakes in this area, but if you prepare yourself well, I would say. But the problem is, there is today we do have, that's one of the assets thing from Jay Burney. Today you can evaluate trademarks, for an example. So there are lists for, if you like hamburger, you can compare the hamburger price in different countries. So the price could be different as well. So you must make sure that the price is the same as you, and that's partly combined to the customer need. I don't know if this was an answer, but research is and understanding the environment, coming close to the. So what I would suggest always is that make some interviews, make sure that you create new contacts, make sure, and more or less always you have personal contacts as well without knowing. Don't be afraid of, become an entrepreneur in that sense either.
True. I truly agree to this point. We are in the fag end of the session, Dr. Staffan.
Thank you.
As I said, there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs watching you, listening to us. So what is that final message you want to give to my students who want to pursue their journey in the field of entrepreneurship?
So take the chance to learn. Don't be afraid, and meet this by be prepared, but also be prepared. And I do think the market today in emerging markets are super good. So there will be chances. Make sure that you create friends as well, because that's also needed in a long life, so to speak. So and try to find what I said: itch, interest, passion. If you have that, you will be successful in a sense.
Absolutely.
So I hope that everyone who will be listening to this has been very fun, and thanks for having me for this session. I love it.
Wonderful. Likewise, Dr. Staffan, it was such a pleasure and honor to have you with us today on this very important topic, who has done immense contribution to the domain of business models. And I don't think there would have been any better person to talk about this. So on behalf of all the audience out here, the students, the faculties, and all from the management of the GIBS, I extend my heartfelt thanks to you for your time. It was such a pleasure listening to you. For the audiences, I'm sure you had a very great interaction, a great learning today. I would say loads of takeaways from today's quick session. And I would also request you to follow Dr. Staffan in his social media platforms, and you get to listen a lot of insights from him. And do follow us on all the social media platforms at GIBS Business School and GIBS IRE Talks. So here we come to an end of a very fantastic session, I would say. I would thank all the audience for being a part of this. Please accept my appreciation for that, for your patience. And the speaker did appreciate the wonderful questions that I received from the students as well. So I'm really happy on that. So yes, thank you very much. The host for today was Guru Prasad, signing off for today evening. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I
I'm very
extend my
pleased.
invitation for you to visit my campus also in Bangalore in India.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
I will
you.
see you soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you for today. Bye.
Bye.